What's up, friends? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. We are getting closer and closer to Packers Giants in London. Absolutely cannot wait. Think this is going to be a very fun game overseas. Had some injury updates from Friday. Let's go over those first. And then I'm going to get to my scouting report for the Giants for this game. First of all, Packers injuries, really good news overall. Adrian Amos, Tariq Carpenter, Devontae Wyatt, all listed as questionable, all practice in some capacity. So, with concussion protocol, you never quite know with Amos. We'll have to wait until probably an hour and a half before kickoff, which will be 7 a.m. bright and early Central Standard Time, to see if he is actually active or not. Tariq Carpenter, Devontae Wyatt certainly matter to a much less extent. You would like to see Wyatt out there, but they could always elevate a Jack Heflin, Chris Slayton, someone like that. So they definitely have some options there. Tariq Carpenter has been active and playing some special teams, but unless Amos is out, Ford should be back on special teams, which should help there as well. So either way, good news for the Packers, not a lot of injuries, and they should, I would think, be able to survive even if Amos, Carpenter, and Wyatt all would not be able to go. But hopefully they're all good, and Green Bay is basically 100% going into this game. The Giants, we cannot say the same thing for. A lot of guys who were ruled out already for this game, including Cordell Flott, probably the least of their worries, but Kenny Golladay, Henry Mordeaux, Aziz Ojelari, who we're going to talk about more in just a moment, Wan'Dale Robinson, Tyrod Taylor, and Kadarius Toney. So they have some serious issues at wide receiver. Remember, Sterling Shepard already out for the year. They're definitely going to miss Aziz Ojelari. This is going to be a bit of a struggle for the Giants, both offensively and defensively, due to some of these injuries. Leonard Williams, their really good defensive lineman, also is questionable for this game. Have a feeling he's going to play, but that will be one worth keeping an eye on as well. Meanwhile, the one piece of good news for the Giants is that Daniel Jones, their starting quarterback, will play. So Green Bay will not face a backup quarterback for the second consecutive week. However, Daniel Jones not exactly lighting the world on fire either. And that brings us to our scouting report. So I want to start actually with the Giants offense, and I want to start with Daniel Jones because I think a lot of times we think of this in almost Madden terms, right? Like, okay, is my guy healthy enough to play or is he not? And if he's healthy enough to play and he's an 89 overall, when he's in the game, he's still an 89 overall. And if he's not playing, then I don't get him at all, and that sucks. And I think we think of it like, all right, if Daniel Jones or if anybody, right, if Adrian Amos, whoever it is, if they're good to go, like they're just going to be themselves and we don't have to worry about it. And that's clearly not always the case. Those injuries can very much affect the player's play. With Daniel Jones, I'm not saying that like his injuries are definitely, going to affect him as a passer or anything like that. Daniel Jones and this Giants offense was effective last week against Chicago's defense because Daniel Jones's mobility and his ability to run the football. Now, clearly, Saquon Barkley sets that up, but if Daniel Jones wasn't mobile in that game, they don't win against Chicago. It is as simple as that. This team is not a good passing team right now. They are a run-only football team that is marrying the concepts between run and pass extremely well, and they need him to be mobile. They used a ton of bootleg. They used a ton of play action, and it was obviously a lot of Saquon Barkley as well. But without Daniel Jones at full mobility, that is a huge break for the Packers and could be devastating for the Giants. Now, we'll see. Maybe he'll be mobile enough that, he's still able to pick up some yards on the ground and that will be effective for the Giants. We're going to have to wait and see. But just even if he is, 75% of his mobility, that is going to be a very big loss because if you go back and you watch this Giants team and how they like to use Daniel Jones, they very much use his mobility to the best of its ability. And that is something that Green Bay generally would have to keep a very close eye on. And now if he's not his normal self and he can't, get out of the pocket, he came back in the game last week and he couldn't really move. They had to change their game plan entirely. So that is going to be a massive thing as you're watching early in this game. Just how mobile is Daniel Jones? And if he's not, that is a huge break for the Packers. And I mentioned the play action and run game. Go back and watch this Bears-Giants game. This is 90% either run or bootleg or play action, just straight play action. And almost all of it was either like run or bootleg. It was going to be like a stretch one way with a fake, bootleg off the other, or they were going to fake the stretch and a bootleg. Like this was constant play action or run. Like everything had a run, look to it, I guess is how I should say it. So there was no, unless it was like a third and long, third and obvious, right? There was no just shotgun. And even then, like the running back would almost come up like he was taking the ball, or at least the threat of a run in the backfield. They were using Saquon Barkley on every single play to be like, hey, he could get the ball. And it's smart. I liked what they did. They don't have a massively talented team right now, so they've got to be a little bit tricky when it comes to those things. And they went all in. They're like, we're not even going to go and like pretend like we're just going to pass the ball. We're not going to go shotgun. This is literally going to be Daniel Jones under center, and it's either going to be a handoff or a play action, and you're not going to know which one it is. And they were successful early, and then Chicago sort of, figured things out a bit, kind of brought some guys off the edge so that if Daniel Jones kept, there was a guy right in his lap, and then that kind of put the end of that. Now, Chicago's offense couldn't put up points, so the Giants were able to get out with a win. But Green Bay is going to have to be very cognizant of the play action and of bootlegs if Daniel Jones is healthy enough to actually pull some of that off. But clearly, their main focus is going to be stopping the run and making sure that Saquon Barkley doesn't get out of hand in this game. Speaking of that, Daniel Jones, through his 4 games so far, if you want an idea of how run-oriented this offense is, here are the numbers for Daniel Jones passing through 4 games so far. 188 yards, 176 yards, 196 yards, 71 yards. This is not a passing team. This is a running offense that is focused on Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones's athleticism, which he may not have in this game. So Green Bay is going to have to commit numbers into the box. Matt LaFleur basically said it this week. Listen, the Bears, they're not playing 8. They were playing 8 in the box sometimes. And you might be like, okay, so they played 9 in the box at other times. Like, this was not a 7 in the box option for them. They were playing not 8, 9 guys in the box. They were being extremely aggressive. And even then, for a pretty good Bears defense, like at least a solid Bears defense, like this, Saquon Barkley was not easy to take down or easy to, take out of the game, even with 8, 9 man boxes. So if Joe Barry has any delusion that he can go 7 man box against this Giants offense that's not going to pass the ball and is going to go run heavy the entirety of the game, like, we need to reevaluate some things, because again, Chicago, 8, 9 guys, you have to be aggressive, play at minimum an extra guy in the box, probably play some extra down linemen. You just got to really be smart and make sure that Saquon Barkley is not the player to beat you in this game. If Daniel Jones, after going 188, 176, 196, and 71, goes for 350 on a bum leg, tip your cap and say, you know what, we'll get better next week. I just don't see that happening. You got to make sure Saquon Barkley is not the guy to beat you. One of the things their offensive line does really well is they make sure that they win their double team blocks. And Mike Wall and I have talked about that, and Mike's brought it up. Like, it sounds simple, right? If you've got 2 guys and they got 1, you should win that matchup, but it doesn't happen all that much. Giants offensive line has been iffy overall, not a great offensive line by any means, but when they get those double team opportunities, they win those, and that creates some of that space for Saquon Barkley. And let me tell you, he does not need a ton of space to be effective. You cannot lose your gap integrity at all in this game. You've got to be strong setting the edge, and everyone needs to know their assignments, stick with it, do their 111th, and just do their job. If they get out of their gap, they will be screwed, because Saquon Barkley will find it. His vision's fantastic. His cutback ability is fantastic. When you think he's going left, he is going right. When you think he's going right, he's going left. When you think he's going right and you actually know it and he goes right, he might break your tackle or just outrun you anyway. You have to be sound, you have to rally to the football, and you have to play fundamental run defense. If they don't, Saquon can go for 200. That's how talented he is. So Green Bay is going to have to be much, much better against the run this week than they were against New England a week ago. And while New England's offense is devoid of weapons right now, one player that caught my eye once again for this Giants offense is Richie James, the wide receiver. Always been a fan of Richie James. Never thought he really got the recognition that he deserved. And you may remember him from a November 5th game in 2020 for the 49ers, in which he had 9 catches, 184 yards, and a touchdown against the Packers. Richie James knows how to get separation. He might be the only Giants wide receiver that can or does in this game. So you're going to want to keep an eye on him, and Green Bay's going to have to make sure that if there is a wide receiver that maybe gets a little extra attention, I know nobody's like losing sleep over Richie James, but let's make sure you take away the wide receiver that has some separation ability. If there is one of those in this game for the Giants, it is Richie James. The other wide receiver you have to at least be cognizant of is Darius Slayton. Now, Slayton, Not a great overall wide receiver, but does have some deep speed and ability. And if you let him get behind you, he will get behind you and he will have some opportunities for some big plays. So with Green Bay playing probably more guys in the box, they're going to want to make sure that they're containing Slayton deep and not letting him get over the top of them. Speaking of which, I would be shocked, like beyond shocked, if the Giants don't attempt a couple deep balls early in this game, because Green Bay's probably going to come out a bit more aggressive and commit some extra defenders into the box, especially after LaFleur's comments this week. And if that's the case, I guarantee you, Brian Dable's smart enough. He knows that they're going to have to back those safeties off if they want to have success. Watch for a flea flicker, which Green Bay had some susceptibility to earlier in the season, and watch for some play action deep shots specifically to Darius Slayton, because they're going to they're going to want to make Joe Barry feel uncomfortable playing those, one of those safeties in the box, and they're going to want to try to get some deep heat down the field and some big plays, which has really sort of avoided them unless Saquon Barkley's generating them. And then last but not least, offensively, sometimes out of necessity, something sparks and you come up with something that could be successful moving forward. The Giants used Saquon Barkley at quarterback in the Wildcat with no quarterback on the field. They just had an extra player out on the field and Saquon at quarterback, and they had some success with it against Chicago's defense. Even with Daniel Jones healthy, I would not be shocked if we saw some Saquon at quarterback as a Wildcat quarterback, and don't be surprised if it gives Green Bay a little bit of trouble. I'm sure they've repped it this week, but that is something they're going to have to be prepared for as well. All right, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball for the Giants. I have to start with it. Number 97, which we're usually talking about Kenny Clark as number 97 defensive lineman. Dexter Lawrence is a absolute freak right now. He is playing out of his dang mind. I was so unbelievably impressed with his tape against Chicago. He was a man possessed. He is huge. He is mobile. He is physical. He is it is unbelievable what he is doing. Now, he did make a little bit of a living against Lucas Patrick, so there is that. But watch out for him against Royce Newman in this game, assuming Royce Newman starts. Maybe they put Elton in at guard, knowing how important the guards are going to be in this game. That's a possibility as well. But watch for Dexter Lawrence versus Royce Newman. Even if it's, Josh Myers, that's going to be a bit of a struggle. Lawrence is a absolute animal and is playing his best football of his career right now. So if you need to circle one player on the Giants defense that you need to make sure does not get going, watch for number 97, Dexter Lawrence. He is an absolute stud. Now, an under-the-radar player I was actually pretty impressed with was Tay Crowder, the Giants' off-ball linebacker. Some really great speed, and if you let him, he will ruin a lot of plays because he can get from point A to point B very fast. Now, not the most physical guy in the world, but he's agile. He will make offensive linemen and just tight ends, fullbacks, etc. miss, get around him, and go make a play. It is essential that, especially with both of these linebackers for the Giants, that if you can get guards on them and get to the second level or center, they're going to struggle to get off those blocks. If you do not get offensive linemen to the second level and then you don't get their hands on them, they are going to wreck some of your plays. So I think the interior of the Packers offensive line, whoever that ends up being, probably Myers and Runyon for sure. And then I would think it's going to be Newman, but maybe it's an Elton Jenkins. Whoever it is, they're going to have to make sure that they're not letting Dexter Lawrence beat them and they're getting out to those linebackers on the second level, because that will make things easier for Aaron Jones, Aaron Rodgers, A.J. Dillon, etc. And those guys are going to be clearly extremely important to the Packers game plan this week. Next up is, I'm a huge believer in you start to get comfortable with what you've recently played against. And what I mean by that is, like, if you win against bad offense, and then you face a really good offense, it'll take you time to adjust. On the flip side, if you just came off of playing 3 extremely tough defenses where every yard was extremely tough, and then you've got a defense that you're playing where they're not very good, the whole field is just going to look insanely open to you because you just came off, your eyes are adjusted for some of the toughest defenses in the world. I think in this game, the Giants could be a little bit shell-shocked because the last 3 quarterbacks they faced, Justin Fields, Cooper Rush, and Baker Mayfield, not exactly the top of the top. And now Aaron Rodgers on a neutral field comes to town, and that is a totally different ballgame. So I think they have probably been a little bit accustomed to lately some lower-tier quarterback play, Fields, Rush, Mayfield, and now back-to-back MVP Aaron Rodgers. And that is going to take, I think, a little bit of adjustment for this Giants defense. So keep an eye on that. I talked about Aziz Ojelari missing this game. I think that is going to be a major loss for them. He is their top pass rusher. They do have Thibodeau, who they drafted early in the first round this year. Thibodeau will make some plays off of athleticism, but he's not technically there yet. If it is Bakhtiari and Jenkins at tackle, or even if it's Bakhtiari and Nyman, I think they're going to be able to control him a little bit. He might get a play here or there, but he's not somebody that I'm super concerned about just because he's a little bit raw still at this point. But Ojelari had the opportunity to really be quick off the edge. Ojelari would have given Elton trouble. Like, there's zero question about it. With where Elton's at tackle right now, Ojelari would have gotten a couple, probably 3-4 pressures, I think, just on that side alone. Not having him is going to be a massive loss for the Giants. Adoree Jackson on the outside, I like him as a corner. He trusts his speed a little bit too much, kind of like Patrick Peterson in that first game. I think you know where I'm going here. I would test him with Christian Watson. I think Adoree's going to feel like I can catch up to him, and then Christian Watson's going to be running right past him. So would not be shocked if we got a Christian Watson deep shot specifically against Adoree Jackson in this game. Their defense as a whole, extremely well coached, rallies to the football, tackles well, and they're very gap and assignment sure. So Mike Wall the other day talked about this team really maximizing their strengths and minimizing their weaknesses. This is exactly that. Wink Martindale is a fantastic defensive coordinator, and he has this semi-talented but not super talented Giants defense, really playing at a high level and really playing sound team defense, which can sometimes be some of the toughest defenses to go against. I do think they have some susceptibility to screens. They play fast and rally to the football, but sometimes they can be a little bit over aggressive. I think they're going to be extra keen on Aaron Jones, but I would try some, maybe AJ Dillon and maybe like a Josiah DeGuara screen. I think they could potentially have some success with that as well. I really enjoy Wink Martindale and the Giants' aggressive mentality on defense. When Aaron Rodgers has been pressured, he's had some struggles this season. So I would be kind of expecting Wink Martindale to really stay aggressive from, defensively. They like to bring a lot of double A gap blitzes. That's been something that's given Green Bay some trouble in the past. That's been a Minnesota staple over the years. Look for the Giants to stay aggressive, and we'll see if Aaron can beat it with his mind and really get some guys open quickly, recognizing it maybe before they bring it. And then last but not least, I think the use of motion and just kind of some Matt LaFleur pre-snap magic is going to be really important in this game. I think if you can get these Giants defenders thinking a little bit more and not just reacting and flying to the football, that could give Green Bay just enough of an advantage to maybe get some explosives or at least some solid yardage on plays. If the Giants are just flying to the football and they don't have much to worry about, that's when they can be most dangerous. So watch for Green Bay to do some motions and some sweeps and just really make those linebackers, safeties, etc. think on the defensive side of the ball. That is going to do it for me today. That is my full scouting report for the New York Giants. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.